Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the February 21st meeting of the Milford Planning and Zoning Board. If we could please stand for the pledge and a moment of silence. Thank you. Meg, if you would, please call the roll.
Mr. Cater, Mr. Sadi are excused. I don't see Mr. Moore. Ms. Austin.
Present.
Mr. Cassignoli. Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
Mr. Collegian.
Here.
Mr. Mortimer.
Present.
Mr. Zaharides.
Present.
And Chairman Quish.
I'm also here. New business, vote by April 27th, 2023, 17 Melba Street, Zone R5, petition of Kevin Cresadian Esquire for a coastal area site plan review to construct a single-family dwelling on map 29, block 587, parcel 5, of which Sachin Sunny Anand is the owner. Applicant has the floor.
Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Good morning. If you state your name and address for the board and you can lift that mic up and speak into it. Thank you.
It's good? All right. My name is Sachin Anand. I live at 17 Maddox Avenue, Milford, Connecticut. I'm here to...
Are you, is Attorney Cresadian coming tonight?
No, he won't be able to make it. He's at his military duty, so he wants me to present this for him.
Mr. Sokas, what's your instinct? Is it, should we wait and have a presentation by the...
Well, it's the applicant, so if the applicant wants to do the presentation, it's okay.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, just wanted to double check. Would you like to describe your project for us?
So basically, there was an existing house which we took it down, and in place of that, we're building a new single-family residence. We're proposing that, and it meets all the zoning setbacks, and as we submitted all the plans to all the necessary departments, and we submitted all the site works, site plan, and all the city engineer requirements, which meets the criteria in order to move forward with the construction. So that's...
Great, thank you. David, if you would give us an overview, please.
The applicant is proposing to construct a new single-family dwelling of approximately 5,000 square feet with a height of 33.5 to the midpoint of the roof from the average grade. The proposed work does not appear to adversely affect or impact coastal resources.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I'd hear a motion.
Yes, I move to approve as presented the petition of Kevin Cresadian Esquire for a coastal area site plan review to construct a single-family dwelling on map 029, block 587, parcel 005, of which Sachin Sunny Anand is the owner.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Meg, is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Meg, please call the roll.
Ms. Austin.
With the motion.
Mr. Cassignoli.
Yes.
Mr. Hirsch.
With the motion.
Mr. Collegian.
With the motion.
Mr. Mortimer.
With the motion.
Mr. Zaharides.
With the motion.
Chairman Quish.
I'm also with the motion. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Next, next order of business is 38 Golden Hill Street, Zone MCDD, petition of Paul Stowell for coastal area site plan review to construct a two-family dwelling on map 44, Block 390, Parcel 8A, of which Grand Village LLC is the owner. If you would state your name and address for the board.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nadeem Khalid, 38 Golden Hill Street. We are trying to build this duplex project as shown on the plans. So we have collected all the information as Mr. Sulcus and the town engineer requested, and we met them, and we've been through the whole process, and they are pretty satisfied with all the architectural work and the engineering work. So we are here to get your blessing so we can move on this thing.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
the city likes to have utilized, and that has been provided to your professional staff. And there was one or two comments, and we did incorporate those comments into the plan. With the approved site plan design, there are substantially less regulated activities, as mentioned by Blake Smith, regarding the potential wetland impacts. There had been a wetlands permit approved back in 2016. We did go back to your Inland Wetland Agency. We were before them in December, and they voted to approve the modifications to the plan relative to the wetland impacts, finding that the proposal, because it is a reduction in the size and a substantial reduction in the activities on the site, is within the scope of the prior wetlands approval, and that occurred on December 7, 2022. You will also hear how the modified plan not only reduces the wetland impacts and the infrastructure components, but is within the scope of this board's 2017 approval. We respectfully submit that there has been no substantial or material change in circumstances associated with the proposal and the property. And most importantly, as the board found with the more intensive plan that you approved in 2017, the proposed site plan will not result in an adverse impact to a substantial public interest, which, as you know, is the standard of review when you are reviewing a proposal, an application that's been submitted pursuant to Section 830G of the Connecticut General Statute. So the client wanted to reduce the magnitude of the site plan and make some changes to it, but obviously, again, stay within the framework of 830G and provide an affordable housing component. One final comment is that we're well aware of that the city has a Section 8-30G moratorium, and we commend you for achieving that moratorium status. Your moratorium expires in, I believe, August 19th of this year, 2023. However, since the board's approval for this residential community occurred in 2017, which was before the moratorium took effect, the moratorium does not prohibit this application from coming to back to the board seeking the modification of the site plan component of the approval. So unless you have any questions for me, with the permission of the chair, I'll turn the presentation over to Dave Golubuski from TPA Design, and we'll walk you through some of the specific changes to the site plan.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions at this point? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, David Golubuski, landscape architect with TPA Design Group in New Haven, 85 Willow Street. Please forgive me for turning my back to you while I was setting up the podium, but I wanted to primarily talk about the site plan. As the lead landscape architect and site designer, our task was, how can we take the previous approval and modify it in such a way to meet our client's objectives of the 189 units, and do it in such a way that we can have a lesser overall impact on the site and still meet his requirements. And I thought the best graphic to demonstrate that is the graphic that's before you, that showed the previously approved plan with the two giant buildings, basically leveling the site from West Avenue to Schoolhouse Road, and in between the buffer to Beaver Brook and to 95. That resulted in a approximately 12-acre overall impact to the site, and the proposed plan in front of you right now reduces that by 50% to about 6.1 acres of overall impact to the site. So again, it was the task of, how can we take this program and do a better job with the site, recognizing the site's unique topography, unique vegetation, and unique environment within Milford. So I just wanted to hit that highlight just to compare the two plans.
I think that microphone is removable if you want to bring it with you.
I'm not sure I need that, but thank you.
Okay.
Dave, if you don't mind, to Dave Sulkus, if you leave that aerial up, I think that's the best graphic to have at this point. I'm not going to get into the weeds too much, but just talk about a little bit about the program. 189 units, 146 garage spaces, 115 surface spaces. Our road comes in off of West Avenue and goes up to the site, comes up the hillside, goes past Building A, Building C, Building D, Building F, turns around in a circle, the fire department approved radius, and then exits the site. There's no longer a connection out to Schoolhouse Road. And so with that, we were able to reduce the previous almost 240,000 square feet of wetland, upland review area impact to 48,000 square feet. And I know that's an inland wetland issue, not necessarily a P&Z issue, but in thinking about the overall development of the site plan, it's a significantly lesser impact on the site. If you can leave this plan up, Dave, if you don't mind. I just wanted to highlight some of the site features. The planting plans, the landscape plan, it's a very robust planting plan. You'll see on the color plan, but also it's within the set, and you don't need to necessarily go to the landscape plan. There are 40 different species that are specified, 8 different deciduous shade tree types, 3 ornamental tree species, evergreen trees, flowering shrubs, over 95% of which are native species. So we work very closely with Milford staff to develop a very robust landscape plan. I'm sure you know from the applicant's previous projects in Milford, very committed to a beautiful landscape. And one of the other features of the plan was careful grading and siting design so we could maintain as much of the existing hardwood canopy and evergreen canopy along the Beaver Brook, and this plan maintains that. Site lighting includes, they're all dark sky rated. There are 3,000 Kelvin fixtures, either 40 watt or 60 watt, depending on where they're located on the site plan. 1.4 foot candle levels, capable of being programmed if the owner so chooses to be dimmed, as well as dark sky compliant. And last but not least, the application on the record as it stands this evening has 19 EV spaces. And after reviewing the updated statute for EV, we recognized that we needed to commit to 10% overall. There are 261 parking spaces. So a revised plan we have this evening that I can submit to you, Dave, includes 8 additional EV spaces located within the proposed buildings, bringing us to a total of 27. The actual number of spaces on the site is 261, 10% rounded up is 27. So that's about the only change to the plan that we have at this time. With that, I'd like to ask my colleague Dave Sacco to come up and speak a little bit about the grading and drainage and some site utility information.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. My name is David Sacco. I'm a civil engineer with TPA Design Group, 85 Willow Street in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm just going to briefly walk through the storm drainage plan that was submitted and reviewed by your city engineer. Essentially, the objective of the plan was to try and maintain as closely as possible the existing flow of water off the site into Beaver Brook and to meet the city's standards requiring an inch minimum of retention of storm runoff and attenuation of storm runoff to levels not exceeding those of the existing condition of the site at storms ranging from 2 years to 100 years. We've accomplished this by introducing a number of subsurface retention systems throughout the site. We chose, in this situation, not to use surface ponds because the site soils are very sandy and gravelly. We had a number of soils investigations done, percolation tests, and came to the conclusion that if we built a pond, it was just going to be a big dry hole most of the time. Rather than have that condition and being unattractive, we chose to use subsurface gullies to handle the stormwater so that the surface of the site could be properly landscaped and we wouldn't have, unsightly weed-filled basins. The stormwater generally is going to reach the Beaver Brook in roughly the same locations it does now. A small portion of the site drains to West Avenue and reaches Beaver Brook there. A small portion on the west side of the site drains down the slope from behind buildings A and C. It will continue to flow in that direction. Most of the site actually drains from I-95 across the center of the site, which is openly wooded, scattered trees mainly. It's kind of a meadow area. It drains down into a low-lying area against the Beaver Brook. It's separated from the brook by a berm. You can see it right. The L-shaped building, to the left of the L-shaped building is a large depressed area. It's sort of a natural basin separated from Beaver Brook by a berm that parallels the brook. That's where most of the stormwater collects and then finds its way either in a very, very severe storm, something on the order of 25 years plus, it would overtop the berm. Most of the time it's simply going to sit there and infiltrate into the ground. So what we've tried to do is emulate that pattern. We're going to have a single discharge point with retention and stormwater treatment up at West Avenue for the entrance drive, a second point behind buildings A and C that's primarily handling those building roofs and a little bit of the driveway. That will discharge overland and down to the brook. And then the majority of the site, buildings B, F, D, and E, and the natural slopes uphill from those buildings will drain down in the same pattern they are now into the large low-lying area, openly wooded area to the left of building D, where they'll percolate into the ground or overtop in a very severe event. However, at every storm level, we are achieving less runoff from the proposed condition than we calculate from the existing condition. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Edan?
Yeah, so this is a AE flood zone, correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, that's a pretty significant flood, wouldn't you agree? That's a pretty significant zone?
Yes, sir.
All right, so if there's a heavy rain, will Beaver Brook overflow into this development?
No, it won't. I'm just going to flip just for a second to a different plan. Okay. This is the site plan superimposed on the FEMA flood map. And you can, oh, sorry, that's the open space plan, that one. So this area that's crosshatched is the AE zone. That's the one, essentially what we would call the 100-year flood zone. And the base flood elevation for that is elevation 39. Now, all of the buildings are sitting above that. Under code, we need to put the first floor of a residential building, a minimum, now it's 2 feet above the 100-year floodplain. So we're accomplishing that, and the vast majority of the site is all going to be above that base flood elevation. There is a stretch of West Avenue right at the entrance that is subject to flooding. Aside from that, there's no other portion of the site. This area here, Zone X, this is an area of 500-year flooding, essentially. They don't establish actual elevations for what that is, but these buildings are going to be elevated to protect them from at least the 100-year level, and this building both have parking on the ground level. So in addition, per the regulations of the City of Milford, because we are doing a small amount of filling in what is a mapped flood zone, we are doing a bit of excavation, compensatory excavation right here in order to offset the loss in volume, in flood storage volume. And we had a hydraulic analysis done by Benesh to evaluate the impact of the proposed work on Beaver Brook, and they determined that there would be no impact in terms of a change in the flood elevation of the brook as a result of the proposed development.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to hand off to Dave Sullivan, who's going to talk to you about traffic.
Thank you. Again, for the record, my name is David Sullivan. I'm with SLR Consulting, and I manage the Traffic and Transportation Planning Group. Before I start, and I'll give you a brief summary of the traffic study we conducted, just a quick point of reference, the 2018 OSTA approval on this site had 342 units and significantly more traffic than the 189 units are being generated here. So I just point that out as a little bit of perspective starting before I get into our traffic study. So the traffic study is fairly traditional. We begin by evaluating the existing conditions. Those existing conditions include a review of area geometric and operational conditions. We look at crash data from the Connecticut Crash Data Repository, and we also collect traffic volume data. And we typically do that during the commuter morning and afternoon peak periods, which is when residential activity is typically highest. We then evaluate the site. We look at a couple of things. One is the amount of traffic that the site will generate. That's called the trip generation, and we do that again for the morning and afternoon peak hours. Based on industry data for this type of use, this type of product, we estimate 70 morning peak hour trips and 74 afternoon peak hour trips will be generated on a typical commuter morning and afternoon peak hour. We then look at the geometric characteristics of the site driveway. Most important one is always looking at site distances. The posted speed limit on West Avenue is 25 miles per hour in this area. The sight lines we looked at were for 10 miles an hour over that speed limit or 35 miles per hour, which based on Connecticut Department of Transportation guidelines would require 390 feet of visibility from the driveway, and we exceed that in both directions, so the sight lines are fine. Next, we look at future traffic conditions, and we look at what the traffic would be without this development in place, and we call that background traffic, and that's at some future year. In this case, I think we went out 2 years for our background conditions, and then we add that site traffic that I talked about on top of it, and that's what we call the combined traffic. We do a series of analyses to determine the level of service, and the levels of service are letter grades from A to F, where just like school grades, A is excellent and F is failing. And we look for two things. We look for poor levels of service, and we look for impacts or changes to level of service. In this case, the levels of service were all acceptable. There was only one movement in our entire study area that had a level of service D. Everything else was A's, B's, and C's. And most importantly, the conditions out there were not impacted. There was no change in level of service in our analysis. So in summary, we find that the traffic generated here can be handled by the area roadways. Our next step, assuming there is an approval of the site, would be to go back to the Office of State Traffic Administration. Currently has an approval. We'll have to modify that approval through them, assuming we get an approval here. So that being said, I will now pass it off to Paul Santos of Newman Architects, who will talk about a little bit about what these homes will look like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Paul Santos. I'm an associate principal at Newman Architects and a registered architect. Newman Architects is located at 265 Church Street. We're on the 15th floor in New Haven.
If you would, please speak up a little bit and into the mic. We're having a little problem with our...
Okay. The Beaverbrook development before you includes 189 units in a mix of 18 studios, 38 one-bedroom units, 49 one-bedroom plus units, and 84 two-bedroom apartments. 10% of the requisite units will be deemed what is called Type A accessible, the balance being Type B. The apartments are arranged in five buildings, each with 36 to 42 apartments in each building. The apartments are all arranged on 3 floors over 1 story of over a ground level parking garage. In addition, the development includes a clubhouse featuring a lounge, fitness center, and a suite of management offices. Now, while the plans are relatively simple and straightforward, the design is a bit more playful with its massing and materials palette. The massing generally the massing in most of the apartments are relatively common. They feel, they include a tail, a head of the building, which is common to all of the apartments. And then there's a tail that creates a sense of variety across all of the units. The exterior materials play off of rural or a farmhouse architecture. As you know, farmhouse architecture, rural architecture was often built out of necessities, utilizing readily available materials. The material palette for the proposed development includes horizontal siding in a variety of exposures, board and batten siding, cement plaster, a bit of stone in select areas to soften up the foundations, asphalt shingles, and metal roofs. It's a lot of materials, but what we've tried to do is unify everything with color and landscaping as David described. We think the richness in the texture of the buildings is really going to set off the development and create a community. If there's no questions,
Any questions from the board?
I'll turn it over.
No, thank you, very clear.
Okay. I'll turn it over to Joe Versteeg.
Good evening. My name is Joe Versteeg. I'm the principal of Versteeg Associates. We're an independent consulting firm specializing in building code, fire code, and the Americans with Disabilities Act and accessibility concerns, as well as fire safety issues. We're located at 86 University Drive in Torrington, Connecticut. I have a one-page letter that I will submit copies for your review later on. We were hired to review this project for compliance with the building code, the fire safety code, and the Connecticut Fire Prevention Code. We have done that. We've looked at the architectural floor plans, the building elevations, the site plans, and the details as they're presented in those documents. And it's our opinion that they comply in all respects with the Connecticut State Building Code, Fire Safety Code, and Fire Prevention Code, and do not present an adverse effect on public safety. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Thank you.
And that concludes our presentation tonight. Thank you for your time and consideration on behalf of MetroStar Properties and Metro 553 LLC. Thank you.
Thank you. David, I have a question for you. Why is this not a new application and it's coming in as a minor change?
Because it's a minor change. It's significantly smaller than what was there. The actual use has not changed. That's why it's minor.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an oxymoron to say that it's significantly less, but it's minor. So significant and minor. I mean, I get it that it's probably better for the environment. I'm just curious as to what was the threshold? Was that it's less disturbance on the site?
It was less of everything, which I'll give you an example of when I do my staff report. I can give you the numbers.
Sure. Why don't we go right into that then?
Okay. The application is considered a minor amendment to the previously approved 830G special permit and site plan application approved by the board on 12/5/2017. The amendment proposes to construct 189 dwellings instead of the previously approved 342 dwelling units, with a total of 268 parking spaces instead of the previously approved 522 parking spaces. Of the 268 parking spaces, 151 are located within the building's footprint at the lowest level, and 117 are surface spaces. The building FAR is 269,239 square feet, where previously 692,600 square feet was approved. Of the existing 2,486,529 square feet, which is a 57.08 acre lot. The building height at its highest is 49.5 feet, and an affordability and marketing plan has been submitted.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Etan.
Yeah, I don't know if it was covered, but how many ways in and how many ways out are at this complex?
There's one way in and one way out from West Avenue.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, I didn't hear anybody say how many ways into the complex there are and how many ways, in other words, how many means of ingress, how many means of egress to get into the property?
There's just a single driveway on West Avenue.
On that single driveway, there was mentioned that the only flooding is in that area. That seems to be a really bad place to have flooding on the entrance. Has been any thought to mitigating that hazard?
Again, David Sacco, TPA Design Group. We are proposing to raise the elevation of the roadway in that area so it will be above the base flood elevation, so that the roadway itself will not be subject to flooding in a 100-year event.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I have one. I'd like to ask the applicant if he would be amenable to putting solar enough to take care of your common area and your EV stations. It would save you money in the long run, and it looks like you have good roof.
Well, I'm glad you asked because we actually have put thought into this, and we are in the investigatory stages of installing solar panels on the roof of Building F, which we have determined with our architect receives the most sunlight, and that will be sufficient to power all of our site lighting. We are willing to look into things beyond that, but to our current investigation, that's the most efficient use of solar panels we have right now.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, Chairman Quish, I don't think we can control how they want to set up their lighting, can we? I mean, they can choose to do it or choose not to do it. That shouldn't be a condition of this application.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's what I was saying. If I was going to make the motion myself, I might include it and see what flies. We do have new state regulations that allow us to support sustainability. We don't really have full understanding of how much leeway that gives us yet. We're still waiting on the determination from, I think, a trade group of environmental lawyers to clue us in on how far we can go with it. Thank you. Sure.
Real quick, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Chris Smith, I just wanted to indicate that the single access way in does meet the code, and that the fire marshal's office did review it, had some initial comments that he discussed with Mr. Versteeg, our fire safety expert, and your fire marshal's office, it's my understanding, has no objection to the plan as submitted. But I just wanted to clarify that it does meet the code with the single access. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one more quick question. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but considering it's on the wetlands or adjacent to, I know sewers are available in that area. We're not talking about any septic systems or anything like that, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
If there are no further questions, I'd hear a motion.
I move to approve as presented, the petition of Christopher Smith, Esquire, for a minor amendment to special permit and site plan approval granted on December 5th, 2017 on Map 42, Block 335, Parcel 1, of which Metro 553 LLC is the owner.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Etan?
Yeah, they've done a great job. They reduced their footprint, they helped with the wetlands, I think they've done a great job.
I second that.
Well done. With no further discussion, Meg, please call the roll.
Ms. Austin,
With the motion.
Mr. Castagnoli, Mr. Hirsch,
With the motion.
Mr. Collegian,
With the motion.
Mr. Mortimer,
With the motion.
Mr. Zaharidis,
With the motion.
Chairman Quish.
I too am with the motion and take you at your word that if it's viable and feasible and in your own best interest, you'd put some solar. Thank you. Good luck with your project. Next order of business is 4464 River Street, Zone MCDD, petition of Robert Smith Jr. for an amendment to site plan approval granted on May 18th, 2021 on map 54, block 322, parcel 4, of which Metro TOD LLC is the owner.
Again, good evening, Commission and Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm Blake Smith, Director of Real Estate Development at MetroStar Properties, which again has its address at 41 Cherry Street, Milford, Connecticut. MetroStar Properties is the managing member of Metro TOD LLC, which is the owner and applicant of this application. With this application, we are requesting to amend the previously approved site plan and CAM to include 2 buildings where there was previously 1. This mixed-use project includes 50 dwelling units and approximately 12,400 square feet of retail space. Parking is 76 spaces on the upper level and a municipal parking garage with 121 parking spaces below grade. In addition to the 2 building configuration, we have changed the architecture to relate more to an urban New England feel that complements the post office building to the north and the River Street facades to our south. This location is directly adjacent to the Metro North train station and by definition forms a true transit-oriented development. And we are excited to be the developer for this project. This change was required due to findings that the city did not have an easement to access the state-owned Railroad Avenue, and as such, we as the developer could not have access to that road, nor a curb cut off Railroad Ave. The 2 building separation allows clear access for emergency vehicles to enter the site from Darina Place. While we pursued the easement for a stretch of time, a long stretch of time, both the city and MetroStar determined that the process to establish the documentation would take over a year to achieve due to the multiple state departments and commissions required to approve the granting of the easement to the city. Therefore, we are here tonight to modify the site plan and CAM so that this project can move forward. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, all city department reviews have been received by the zoning office with approvals as required. I will introduce my experts now. With me tonight is John Wicko of John A. Wicko Architects located here in Milford, and John is the project architect. And Ron Wassemer of Connecticut Civil Group, also located in Milford. Ron is the professional engineer and land surveyor for the project. If I may, I'll cede the floor to John Wicko.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board Chairman, members. John Wicko, 58 Prospect Street in Milford. Just want to talk about the major changes as a result of items that Blake described for you. The first one is the rendering, which changes the character of the building, and the other is going from 1 building to 2. That is an effort to make feasible and possible that we have 1 entrance in and 1 entrance out off of Darina, and we're using the other exit entrances through the city property to the west of the far west corner of the property. As a result of the the style context change. We were able to reduce the overall massing and the size of the buildings in terms of its height, and also by reducing from the scale from one building to two, we're able to introduce a smaller scale as we go up Dorena Place. So with that, we were able to use a coastal urbanism that is found in some very nice coastal cities and towns like Portland and Newport, using flat roof and brick facades that's well detailed. And it also responds to the context of River Street in a very positive way. As Blake mentioned, the post office, the courthouse, the town hall, St. Peter's Church, all have that kind of a coastal urbanism to it, a very friendly and approachable buildings. And to a lesser extent, in terms of its location, the Daniel Street Loop and the lower end of River Street.
Excuse me, would this be an elevation from the corner of Railroad and
That's Dorena.
Railroad and River, so we're sort of looking northeast or northwest?
No, we're at the corner of Dorena and River Street, looking south and west.
Okay.
So it's the same perspective view as the previous perspective from the former building. So to the right of you is the post office.
Okay, now I understand, thanks.
You can see the train track. That's one of the poles from the Metro North train line, and then there's the house on Dorena that you see with that bend in the road sign there, right? So that's the prominent corner.
Understood,
that
thank
we're
you.
talking about. Yep. So as the rendering shows, the building on River Street is a brick with different detailing and colors that break up the facade to a more personable, comfortable feel. The front, as you see, is the same entrance, the same ramp, handicap ramp, and building entrances from the River Street side. We also, on the Dorena side, which is to the right, we're able to break the building down and introduce a more residential scale that continues onto Dorena Place with gables and pitched roofs and panels and architectural detailing, which we can see in the elevations. I'm just trying to go over the changes and not try to make a full presentation for you. It's kind of...
Sure, I have one question. If
Yeah.
you're parking down in the ball fields and you're gonna get on the train going southbound towards New York,
Yes.
and you're walking from Fowler Field, how do you get to the train station?
You either go on High Street and come up the bridge, and there's a matrix of ramps that get you up to the southbound station, or you can go to the corner where David is showing Railroad Avenue and walk up that Railroad Avenue, which is part of the Metro North property, and then enter the southbound station.
So
there.
you'd walk up the road?
It's the same way you would
Yeah,
currently.
it's currently like that.
That's not changing, right?
Right. Most people, the way I understand it, the southbound station was designed and laid out more from High Street, so you would walk on the on the eastbound side. There are sidewalks that parallel the train track that goes by the Fine Arts Council, and you go under High Street, and then there's ramps and steps that go right up directly to the platform. So that's the primary way of going to the southbound train.
Is there a way to create a a sidewalk on your property to go, instead of on Railroad Avenue, go on your property to the right of Railroad Avenue to get to the platform?
It's really it's too far away. We have, internal circulation for the parking and the occupants, but nothing that we could extend up to the platform. It's really just too far away. So we have internal circulation, but it wouldn't be substantial enough to encourage people to use that to get to the southbound station. And currently, if you're coming from that direction, you would walk up that route.
Unless you elevated it to the point where the car could turn around underneath it. So this is the walkway. If it was elevated, wouldn't disturb circulation of cars.
Elevated walkway?
Yeah.
Yeah, that hasn't been thought about or looked at. It's almost impossible because we don't own that property, so we can't.
No, on the property you do own is what I'm talking about.
It wouldn't get you anywhere, though. It would let you back down onto the city property, which is the parking lot, or it would be on Metro North property, which we couldn't control.
Yeah, there would be a transition, obviously, up and down, yeah.
Yeah, that's something that's it's out of our control because it's off our property.
I'm talking about on your property, not off your property. You'd have to, anyway, I'm not going to design your project.
Yeah, we could certainly talk later if that would help.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going down the side of Dorina. Let's see, we talked about that. And then the rear building is designed in a much smaller scale to respect the residential quality of Dorina, and has more residential architectural features, dormers, pitched roofs, asphalt shingles, bay windows, that type of thing. The other parts of the site development remain unchanged. At River Street, the building entrances, like I said, the ramp and all that is the same. The entrance points are the same into the first floor mercantile. The municipal property, garage is the same entrance. The off-street surface parking is the same. We did add the second building, and we're parking under that to meet the same parking requirements that was previously approved. All the site features have been re-engineered when necessary and coordinated by CCG. And any details that needed to change have been. And all the drawings have been reviewed by the various departments and are all approved and in favor of these changes that we're presenting. We did prepare a new site lighting plan that shows the new fixture locations based on the new configuration and details of traditional pole and side mounting devices for the coach lights and acorn-style light fixtures. We did submit a zoning narrative that's in the file that describes any changes that were significant enough to mention in areas and square footages. But basically, we've changed the character, we've introduced a second building, and all the other attributes of the development are the same. I can answer questions or go over drawings further, the architectural drawings, but they're pretty self-evident.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions? Eitan?
So the parking, there's going to be 76 spaces in the garage?
There are 76 at the surface level, which is at grade, which is
Okay.
on top of the deck, which is 121 spaces. I think we snuck in another space in that garage.
So I'm the lawyer, not a mathematician. That's about 197 spaces total?
Yep.
And how many can people from the general public use these parking spaces, or is it limited only to use for that property?
The municipal garage is under, and the surface parking has no restrictions, no gates, no passes, anything. So it's open parking and shared.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time?
So the entrance to the garage is River Street?
Yes, the garage
And the
entrance is
entrance
River Street.
to the upper lot is on Dorina?
Is on Dorina and from the Milford Municipal Lot. That's at grade on that
Gotcha.
southwest corner.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I realize this is a modification. I'm just wondering if the solar and the EV charging station has been, it's in the plans?
Yeah, Ron Wasmer has actually going to submit some plans that talk about that and show the locations, but they have been considered.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Ron Wasmer, the project engineer.
Good evening. Good evening. For the record, Ronald Wasmer. I'm a professional engineer and land surveyor with an office at 158 Research Drive here, representing Metro TOD LLC, the applicant. I've worked with the applicant and the architect to prepare the site plan and the site engineering plans for this amended application. This amended application is quite similar to the previously approved application. One amendment to the site plan is the incorporation of electrical vehicle charging stations. They're not indicated on the plan that you have now, but I have a plan that I'm going to submit to for the record. We've included 7 electric vehicle charging stations on the surface level parking and 13 on the lower level parking. One clarification is the lower parking level is completely under the control of the city. This 121 parking spaces is being built for the city to use for public parking, and that was the whole concept of this transit-orientated design. The 77 parking spaces on the grade level are also open to the public in general, but specifically the lower level was designed as substantial parking for the downtown area. So at this point, I'm going to give these to your clerk.
So the residential renters don't have a dedicated spot to park?
I don't believe that's correct. I believe that is a correct statement, yes. I do have some 11 by 17s I can pass out to the board. You can see where these electric vehicle charging stations are. So what I just handed you is just a really simple sketch, just showing the incorporation of the electric vehicle charging stations. There's 2 pages to it. You'll see 7 located on the surface level and 13 located on the lower level. This is a coastal site plan. The site is currently developed. The proposed development poses no adverse impacts to the coastal resources. The coastal resources of this property are shorelands, and shorelands are any land within 1,500 feet of the coastline of Milford and the coastal flood hazard. The application poses no adverse impacts to these coastal resources. The most significant change to the site plan is the elimination of the driveway from Railroad Avenue. The majority of the site plan attributes remain very similar to the approved plan. So there's a driveway entering off of Dorina Place, just as there was in the past. The entrance to the lower level parking garage is off of River Street, just as it was in the previous application. We've received favorable review from all the city departments. This includes city engineer, the fire marshal, the inland wetland agency, the police department, and the sewer commission. I can review the site plans if the commission has any questions, but again, these are quite similar to the previous application. I can also add some comments about accessibility to the train station. So if you were coming from, say, the City Hall right here and you wanted to access the train station, you could walk along sidewalks on Dorena Place. You could traverse through this property to other city property that the city has with parking spaces adjacent to Railroad Avenue. The majority of the people that would want to access by foot would most likely walk along Railroad Avenue. Again, one of the principal reasons we're here with an amendment is the challenges that we had obtaining easements from the state of Connecticut to turn Railroad Avenue into a two-way street. We spent probably close to 2 years dealing with the city attorney here, as well as the Department of Transportation. It's quite possible that at some point in history it can happen, but the wheels of the state of Connecticut turn very slowly, and I know that both everyone here as well as the administration was anxious to get this project moving. It's been in the works for quite a long time. The modifications did allow us a slightly more green space, so an additional landscaping plan has been provided with some additional trees along Railroad Avenue now that we're not doing any work along that, as well as along the residential properties on Dorena Place. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And if not, I'll turn it back over to.
Are there going to be permits required to park in the municipal parking?
Again, that's at the complete control of the city of Milford. The lower level parking is on a 99-year lease to the city of Milford, as requested in the original request for proposal from the.
Well, no, I'm just asking, due to the proximity to the train station, I mean, are they going to require permits to park there like they do now, right next to the station?
The city, I think, was looking at exploring a parking authority. So at the moment, it'll be up to the city. It's to be determined.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the board? David, if you would want to throw your hat in the ring.
The applicant is proposing to amend a previously approved site plan application to construct a mixed-use project of 2 buildings with a subterranean parking garage. And on 5/18/21, the board previously approved plans for 1 mixed-use building of 61,928 square feet through site plan approval. The front building along River Street is 51,844 square feet, and the rear building is 12,325 square feet, for a total of 64,147 square feet. Compared to the previously approved plan, the residential dwelling unit count remains at 50 dwelling units with a parking deck of 76 spaces. There is an increase of 1 parking spot to 121 parking spaces for public use in the municipal garage, an additional 119 square feet of commercial/retail space. The landscaped area has increased from 3,386 square feet to 4,257 square feet. The resubmission is being made because the previously approved, proposed and approved by the board planned by the board, used Railroad Avenue for the parking garage access, required a state of Connecticut approval, which could not be obtained in a timely manner. This necessitated the proposed changes from the previously approved application and relocation of the garage entrance to River Street. The application is zoning compliant.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Etan?
So basically, it's two buildings instead of one. The footprint, the number of square feet stays the same, it's just two different buildings. That's how I see it.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'd hear a motion.
Sure. I move to approve as presented the petition of Robert Smith Jr. for an amendment to the site plan approval granted on May 18th, 2021, on map 54, block 322, parcel 4, of which Metro TOD LLC is the owner.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Meg, call the roll, please.
Ms. Austin?
With the motion.
Mr. Cassignoli?
Yes.
Mr. Hirsch?
With the motion.
Mr. Collegian?
With the motion.
Mr. Mortimer?
With the motion.
Mr. Zaharidis?
With the motion.
Chairman Quish?
I'm also with the motion. Motion passes. Wish you good luck. I'm sure we'll all be happy when we see that building no longer there. Next order of business is subcommittee reports. We had a POCD subcommittee report 2 weeks ago, and when is the regulation subcommittee scheduled?
We have to reschedule that. I can chat with you about that perhaps next week or the week after.
Okay, thank you. Those minutes are available. Next order of business is approval of the minutes. I will recuse. I was not here at the last meeting. I hear a motion.
I move to approve.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Thank you. Chair's report, I have none. Staff report?
None this evening.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.